To
This
spend with us,
conference will now be recorded.
taking a little piece of your Thursday to spend with us. We appreciate it, particularly with all that's going on right now. Special thoughts going out to any of you who might be living on the Gulf Coast there in New Orleans and or in Louisiana and Texas. Hope you're all safe and doing okay. So our presentation today is people analytics is not just for HR. We want to talk a little bit about in the webinar today what frontline managers need from people analytics, metrics, statistics, and analytics, and talk a little bit about the relationship between HR and those frontline managers. As Jonathan mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder of TrenData. I'll tell you a little bit about our company here in a minute. But first, I'd like to go over what we're going to cover today. So as I said, I'll give you just a brief background of TrenData, who we are, look at some of our clients, and then we'll move into the meat of the presentation, talk about, probably could have named this first bullet better, but talk about the HR functions that kind of take place outside of HR, more of a delineation of what tends to go on, of what HR is responsible or normally takes care of in people matters versus what the line managers take care of. And we'll look at that across both a division in the company as well as a job level, so across and up. And we'll talk about the different types of information and metrics that the various levels of line managers need, all the way from the work group manager up to the C-suite, and how you can make information easily available to those individuals as an HR leader. We'll spend a little time just giving a brief overview of the TrenData solution. And as Jonathan mentioned, we're very happy to take questions. So just put them through the chat and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. As again, a little bit about us, TrenData, we're headquartered in Richardson, Texas. That is just a little north of Dallas, if you're familiar with the area. We've been in business since 2017. We sell largely to corporate clients, but essentially anybody who has a workforce is a potential TrenData client. Our solution is AI-driven people analytics. It's a cloud SaaS offering. So all you need is a browser to access it. And it's a very easy implementation. So let's move on. These are a few of our clients. We try to put a sampling in there that goes across different industries: manufacturing, healthcare, finance, insurance, technology, to give you a sprinkling that if you're looking at doing business with TrenData down the line, we can generally get you a couple of references in your industry or specialty. So just to let you know that off bat. So let's move into our presentation, some of the content. I always like to start out with some statistics that I pulled from industry experts on the topic that we're discussing. So this one comes from the Hay Group. It was done a few years ago, talking about somewhat the relationship, not only informationally, but culturally between HR and their line managers. So some interesting nuggets in here. The first one says that HR spends probably about a third of their time responding to line manager requests. So, they get a request from whoever it is, and they have to run things down and send it back out to the line manager. And the second kind of point is the line managers don't tend to be very patient about what they're looking for. 3/4 of HR leaders say that when they get a request from a line manager, they're demanding an immediate response. On the flip side of that, line managers said almost 3/4 of them believe that HR keeps information to itself too much. The expression in the survey was too close to its chest, but really that HR doesn't share its information enough with the line managers. Now, an interesting point is this fourth one that talks about almost 9 in 10 HR leaders want line managers to make more people decisions. But you see the caveat right under that, almost half of them don't feel that they're empowered by their organization to do so. So you can see that kind of gets to, there's both a cultural problem in addition to a technical one, which is, getting the information out there. So we're going to focus a little more on the technical aspect in our presentation. But generally, if you're seeing, problems like this within your organization, there's probably a larger discussion that needs to take place as to, how you can get the information out to your line managers, because, they're running the business, and if they think they need information, it has to be decided how to get to them. Incidentally, I always throw a few trivia for dollars into my presentation. So, the first 5 people who can chat to Jonathan who the host is of that game Family Feud right there will get a $10 Starbucks gift certificate. And I will throw an extra $5 if you can tell what was the comedy series he was even more famous for before Family Feud. So something for everybody to try. So we got a couple of people on that already. All right. So let's talk about, maybe some of the delineations of functions, people functions that go on within organizations or corporations. I believe I got this information from SHRM, which tried to do a study a few years back of, what people decisions tend to take place in HR and what tends to take place, out in the field in the context of someone doing their job and reporting to their manager. And they're very continuous. So you can see in most instances, it's human resources that tends to source hires for line managers to then eventually make the ultimate decision. When it comes to orientation or high-level training, usually that's a human resource function, brings all new employees in and trains everybody on company process, but that's continued out in the field by the line manager, who gives, the very specific attributes of a job. You picture bringing in a salesperson who will get all the, particulars about, the company, but then when they move underneath their sales manager, they get the territory, they teach them, the product and to sell and things like that. Human resources divides his policies and procedures where the line manager implements them. And generally, high-level training, most companies do have an onboarding training, which they tend to direct at all employees. And then once the employee is moved out to the field, who they're working for, that's where the coaching and development takes place, which is, again, a natural a delineation or continuation. And then, calibrating and reward. So HR will tend to set up how you measure someone's performance, what are the bands for salary and raise and such. The line manager is the one who actually does the review and makes the recommendations. And then finally, a line manager generally decides whether or not they're going to keep a person. Sometimes that's a higher level decision than the immediate manager, but then HR is responsible for the out processing. Now, this is a pretty universal across both job level. So this tends to take place throughout, whether it's an immediate manager who's managing direct people, a director who's managing managers, all the way up the line and across all of, the different divisions or disciplines within the company. It's just a question of, often the manager is training their immediate direct reports, or maybe coordinating a larger practice over, a couple of levels down. But if you look at, what are the things that, these particular managers want to track, it gets a little specific. So if you look at maybe just an immediate manager who has no managers reporting to them, but this could also be true up and down the line, they'll be concerned with, the performance of the individual, how they're compensated, and maybe things like, how long does take to fill an opening. Generally, these are the people who are keeping the frontline engine going, whether it's the support, the finance, the services. So they're the ones tasked with getting the doers into the organization. As you go up the line, those same metrics and statistics tend to be important, but there are other ones that tend to maybe come into play, like a director who's maybe a little more responsible for P&L might be interested more in employee churn. Am I hiring 13 people this month and losing 12 every month? And then also maybe coordinating the development and things that might be a little more P&L oriented, like how much does it cost when I hire somebody new, and possibly how much does it cost when I lose somebody. And then as you get up to the C-suite, you might be looking at some higher level, more business directed metrics. My experience is not enough companies track things like revenue per employee, but a lot of the more progressive ones do. Turnover is a big one that pretty much all the upper levels we've seen want to be able to address. Succession planning tends to take place, I think, too often limited to the C-suite and next level, and there's not enough thought given to succession down in the third and fourth rungs of management. But then also things that may be compliance related, like ethnicity, gender, other things that at the high level, particularly public companies need to keep an eye on. But regardless of what the metrics or analytics are that the individual organization is wanting to track, they need to be able to go down through the whole organization. And so, for example, a C-suite, a CFO might want to look at his immediate reports, but he might also want to look further down to that person's reports and that person's reports. So the metrics that are relevant, might get more broader as you move down the churn as to what a particular manager and at what particular level might want to see. Now that kind of brings you to a little bit of the security question. So I've asterisked a few of these fields here to talk about, there's also the issue of the sensitivity of data. So some metrics might be more sensitive in the organization than other. Reward or compensation is often very sensitive, maybe performance. Things like ethnicity may be considered, we'll talk about PII in a second. And it's not often universal that companies like to publish their succession planning charts. So to know, one vice president might think they're in line for a possible position only to find out that they might. There's arguments to whether that should be public through the company or not, but that's not often information that companies are necessarily looking to make public. So the point I was making down at the bottom is that any of this information, though, is not sensitive or as sensitive when it's visualized in groups. So if you're looking at an analytics, people analytics dashboard, you can look at it in this context and you see trends of groupings of people, turnover, source of hire. None of this information is sensitive or personally endangering information when viewed in a work group in a workforce setting like this, where you're seeing it all visualized and rolled up. Where it can get a little tricky is when you drill down to the individual level. We're all familiar, I imagine, on this call with what's considered personally identifiable information, which encompasses a number of fields that can actually let you drill down and see who the individual is and have individual stats on that. So that's the type of information that needs to be a little more carefully guarded within organizations. Also, information that's not necessarily PII information, but information that maybe doesn't need to, it's more hierarchically secure information. So for example, a manager might pretty often would need to see perhaps the salaries of all the person in their particular hierarchy, but you may not want a manager to see his boss's salary or his peer's salary. So often that's a very sensitive type of information that you need to be aware of. And that kind of rolls into the whole idea of hierarchical security. So when you're doing any kind of solution like this, you've got to look at what's the sphere of visibility you want various individuals to have. So in typical hierarchical security, what you often have is it's based on where you are in the organization. So someone at the top level of the whole company would probably be able to see the entire company's information within their view. But then as you move down the hierarchy, you might have several divisions. You want them to see from their point down. Same with department and work group, so that you can still present this type of information, but not in a way that someone can see parallel things that maybe it's too sensitive or not things that the organization wants to see. Now, if you roll on top of this, there are, of course, players within the organization who might have to see, certain configured views. So take an HR business partner, which is the best example I usually come up with, is, an HR business partner may be assigned to a division, and they might have to see everything that division vice president sees, or they might have to see everything that division vice president sees, except a few things. Maybe they would cut out salary or certain other things. But being able to kind of customize a view on top of this hierarchical view is often something to be taken into consideration when rolling out information and data out to the managers within your organization. So to look at it, what you would like to be able to see, so here's an example of an exact same dashboard where you would have the very top where the CEO might log in. He would see everybody, he or she would see everybody within the organization, and all of their metric and analytic views would be based on that population, that point down in the organization. Now you might take a director who's 2 rungs down in that last view that I showed. They would log in, have an exact same dashboard set up for them, but they would see just what's in their view. Maybe they have 26 employees total, and all of the metrics, source of hire, would be just based on that population count. So being able to segregate that hierarchically is important in rolling out information to your line managers in this hierarchically secure manner. If I go kind of this next step, kind of like to talk about, the ease or the availability to get information out. We're all kind of different people in how we're made up. I don't think data wonks are limited to IT, HR, or any field, but there are generally people within the population who really like to dig into this stuff and have an aptitude to be able to build out this type of thing. And often what we find with our solution is there's a person like that in HR or maybe in an analytics division who can actually build out these dashboards and then push them out to the various consumers. So you look at someone who can put together all the relevant metrics, push them out, and then the executive who's spending most of their time, often trying to make money for the company or save money for the company, can actually just log in, view a pre-built dashboard to their specifications, with it being pushed out with all the appropriate hierarchical security or whatever security put into the system, so that they're not seeing anything they don't have to, but that they can also don't have to take the time to actually build and set up the information. And it might be also that these are company mandated dashboards that the company wants everybody to see, but that maybe the people out in the line managers also might want to log in, drill down, create more views for themselves, which they're apt to do. But the general gist of it is being able to create stuff for people who don't have the time, but also give them the ability and flexibility to build and view and do things that they might see on the ground that are more viable to what they're doing. So I would make the decision here, there's people who create information and there's people who consume it. I'd say on the large side, most line managers are consumers of information. But like I say, that tendency to be a wonk is not limited to any department. I've been in sales most of my life before I started TrenData, and I was always a report person. I always wanted to dig in and see what the data is and make decisions off of that. So I would be the one someone would push a dashboard out to me, but then I would take it and do all sorts of variations with it. So kind of in summary, we'll just go through the things that we've covered here. So the first point is, both HR and line managers really do need availability of data. It's just a question of, what it is and how it gets to them. You want to look at, what data analytics and metrics are available, but also within those security parameters we talked about, what's permissible for everybody to have. It's very important to determine key metrics, and that's often a discussion between the two groups. HR, of course, doesn't know everything that goes on in the life of a line manager and the things that they have to keep track of. So it's often very good to see meetings of exactly what a particular, have meetings to decide what metrics might be necessary, and they might be more that's initially created by HR. The determination of who should see what at the various levels, and also within the various metrics themselves. And then, how do you get it out to them? Do you have certain people create the information and push it out to the managers? How much freedom do you give them to be able to, create and do things themselves? And that's where we come kind of to the technology aspect of being able to give you a tool or something that can actually help facilitate this process. So with that, I was going to just give just a brief high-level demonstration of TrenData, but more in the line of how it illuminates these points that I've been talking through the presentation, and not to the aspect of trying to be too salesy in this. So if you see, you should be seeing a screen right now of a dashboard with some metrics on it. Right here, you're looking at a particular line manager view at the top of the organization. So this is somewhere where I might have 1,000 employees in the company, and every metric I have here is tied to that top line breadth of the whole company metric creation. It's the absence is two across the entire organization. It takes 47 days to fill an open position. This is a line manager view. I could have a separate view for maybe human resources that might want a more concentrated or more a broader look at a bunch of different metrics. And there might be ones, as I talked about earlier, that might be specific to the executive level, which might be a little along the lines of, do I have enough successors within my organization? What are the top line things around revenue per employee? Maybe what my churn is within the organization. All these things can be determined based on what the organizations need to see. And you're of course not limited to just creating for the positions. If you wanted to have a particular dashboard around a specific discipline, like maybe retention, all of these can be related to what are the factors keeping people at the company, or what's making them leave the company, or perhaps recruiting, what's getting people in the door, how much does it cost to hire somebody? And also, if a metric, some of the data is not available, you would get a blank chart. But going back to the line manager view, so here's a good example of someone in HR created this view with all of the most relevant metrics that a particular line manager might be able to see, but that line manager might be a few rungs down from the top. So what you can do is actually share the dashboard out to as many users within the organization if you want. So for example, I can share this data to, I created myself as a director within the organization. You can actually see, I can go to that individual view. It'll tell you what my particular stats are within the organization, a director, making this much, been with the company this year, this many years. And then I can actually look at that view through logging in as a separate user, and I have to do this through an incognito window. But if I were to switch over to that, you would see I have the same view as the top line view, but it is just winnowed down to my sphere or my hierarchy. So I have 26 people reporting to me. My time to fill an open position is a little bit longer than the company average, and it's taking. And my people tend to take off or be absent a little bit more than the company average. On the flip side, in the hires versus terminations, I've added people in my organization and not had any churn at all over the last 5 months. So a couple of positive, couple of negatives you can see from this particular view. But basically, I can push this dashboard to everybody in the organization, and they would see it just based on their place within the organization. Now, a couple of things that can be, really useful in this scenario. If I go back to the human resources view, for example, I'm looking at predictive projections going out. So this is telling me throughout the entire company, what is my diversity going to look like going forward in the organization. So it's telling me that basically it doesn't look like things are going to change much. I've got a very similar pattern as far as what percent of my organization is going to be Caucasian versus other ethnicities. I can do this based on other factors. If I wanted to look at perhaps maybe gender, is that projection going to be any better? So I can drill down and look at this within gender. I think I have, so we did ethnicity. We can look at other things, possibly generational, to be able to set up the view to look like that. And you can also do predictive measures. So for example, if I wanted to look at, here's my turnover for the next couple of months, I can also look at this in both a historic view, if I wanted to look at it for the past 12 months or past 5 years or past number of quarters. But the real key is, do I want to see it going out into the future? Now, demographics might be something that might be a little more holistic or long-term, but turnover is something you might want to address quickly. So if you do the predictive view on this one, it's set up to give you a view of turnover over the next 6 months. So it shows you turnover spiked up here in June and it's been coming down a little bit, but still at a pretty high monthly level, 3%, which is about 36% annualized. And what the system will also do is give you some analysis of that turnover, tell you what's driving it, salary, maybe not so much, remote employees, professional development. And then you can actually model these views and see, for example, what would happen if I change something. So for salary, for example, if I gave everybody a $5,000 raise, just saying the average salary in the company is $124,000. If I wanted to change that to say a raise of 5,000, it shows that turnover would only go down about 0.1%, which is not a big jump. So fortunately, this is a predictive model, so I can back that out. We can also see that this organization has looks like they've gone to remote employees, possibly due to the current pandemic, pretty much almost in total. But you might want to look at a prediction as what's going to happen maybe, if we come out with a vaccine or there's a back to work, back to the office initiative indicated a couple of months from now, what would happen if I go back to my pre-COVID levels of 35? And that will give me a bit of a spike. I can also look at it from the standpoint of what does that do in performance? It shows that it's hitting both my high performers and my non-high performers, and maybe I don't wish to necessarily curb the departure of my non-high performers. And if I look at this saying that my high performers do value professional development a lot, and I look down here, I can see that less than 7% of my high performers are in any kind of professional development. So actually see what would happen if I increase that to say 20%. Instead of giving out raises, maybe I target the money here. And you can see that that drives down the high performer turnover. So predictive analytics, it can be granulated down to the individual department. So I could be a group of 20 people and I would get maybe a different analysis for my particular organization as opposed to this one, which is looking at the company-wide. So just wanted to spend a little time just giving you an overview of the product. But the key is that you can set up privileges where you can look at standard users who only see from their point in the organization down, but you can have administrators who can see everything. And then you can also build what's called a business admin, which is basically you can assign a myriad of privileges like I showed with the with the HP business partners. So with that, I am going to move back to the presentation and start off. Jonathan, do we know who are our winners there?
Yeah, so we had quite a few respondents. So for the $10 Starbucks gift card, we have Kevin Overby, Renee Boyce, Christina Dennis. Did you say 3 or 5, Tom?
5. We're being
5. Okay. Angela Benavides and Jason Fights. And then Kevin Overby and Jason also included the Hogan's Heroes.
Okay. Did anybody get Hogan's Heroes by itself? I'll give $5 for those person.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look at the chat records afterwards.
Okay, looking at Mary McDermott, I think she got it, yeah.
Mary McDermott, yeah, and Tom, I just have a first name of Tom. So Tom, if you'll send me your email address, I see that you're right after Angela Benavides there, so.
Okay, all right, well, let's move on. Do we have any questions that came in as well?
Yeah, I got one right at the very beginning, and I think you may have answered it, but I'll read it off. It was, what are some of the blockers to line managers and HR meeting each other's needs, and how can we address them with softwares? That's the question.
Well, the biggest blocker I'd say probably is, I mentioned at the beginning, was HR not knowing what they can give out to line managers. And I think if that policy is documented clean, I don't see most HR leaders as people who are stingy with the information. They're often worried about what they give out. So I think if companies coordinate a little better and are able to make it clear what information can be given out, I think that's the bigger hurdle. As you can see, technologically, it's not difficult to get information out to the organizations with a tool like ours, or some others I've seen in the market. So I think it's more a clarity over what can be shared.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I didn't see, outside of Hogan's Heroes, I didn't see many other questions this time.
I saw one on data, which was asking, where generally is this an HRIS or a reporting? So it's more of an analytics reporting engine. So generally, the data that's found within the system that's used with the system comes from your HR type system. So you can pull information in from your HRIS, SAP, Oracle, whoever. Might want to bring in your recruiting information, which might be JobVite or iSIM, and other sources you have. So it could bring in basically any source of people data. And as I mentioned during the presentation, often what I try to encourage our clients to do is to include more financial information, because it's really impactful if you can show what does it cost to lose a high performer? What are the results in revenue to the company? If you're paying someone, $125,000 a year and they're a high performer, they're probably bringing, $300,000 to $500,000 to the company, and you lose 20 of those people in a quarter or a year, and what's the joke? Soon you're talking about real money. So I'd say that's a good one. I would just like to push out to people. So
right. Mary mentioned she has a comment here. It says we've been a small company and so have been able to have our HR managers teams with their business colleagues. We've gotten larger, and so that personal touch isn't going to be possible. How do we work with a larger management team to assist them in understanding the system and other self-serve systems that scale?
Yeah, you're well. First of all, congratulations to be part of a growing company, and that's generally something that happens as you start to grow. We often talk to companies who aren't interested in our solution when they're smaller. They say, "Yeah, those are all great stats, but I know this because I talk to everybody every morning." And then they get into multiple hundreds of people, and they're like, "That's no longer possible." So I'd say more of a top-down strategy and a meeting with probably your top-level line managers is a good place to start, and find out what information were they able to get, but that they can't get any more, and what do they need to provide. So I'd say it always starts out with communication, but it does get difficult because that's where cultures tend to change a little. I've been in places, and that's we're a mid-sized company now. I talk to everybody in the company probably at least during the week, but when you start getting bigger, and you try to keep that up, because that's the balance of culture and growth is a tough one to manage. But I'd say start with your top level managers. Maybe do it a 2-tier meeting. Have them go out to their reports and find out what is the information they could use to run their business, and then come back and start put together a strategy of what's needed. And then you go to the next stage of how do you get it to them, and what is not unpermissible to give to them. So it's a process, and we do some consulting. We have some management consulting part of our company. We're happy to work with you on that if you want to have a conversation afterwards. Okay. All right. Well, I would like to thank everybody again for spending some time with us today. I hope this is a beneficial discussion for everyone. If you're interested in following up with me, that's my email, Tom@TrenData. I also put some my personal Twitter and blog, but more particularly, this is the information to follow TrenData. If you want to do get a deeper demonstration from one of our salespeople, just saw that from Mary. Yes, we will send the slides out to you, no problem. I just put out an article on Forbes today. If you check my LinkedIn, the title of it is how people analytics can help companies thrive during a downturn. So I encourage you to go out and take a look at that. But thank you again for your time, and we do these monthly. So we'll send an invitation out to you next month in September. Usually it's the last Thursday in September. The last Thursday of the month we do our webinars. But we do have all of these webinars are recorded and on our website. If you go to the resources tab on our website, I think there's a pull down which will take you to webinars, and you can go back and listen to all the prior ones. But thank you very much, and everybody stay safe, and have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. Thank you.